Tournament of Monsters, Chapter 1, Death Omen. Jockey Island, cloaked in the mystical veil of the Dragon's Triangle, remains one of the most enigmatic and secluded places on Earth. This uncharted island, hidden from conventional navigation and maps, holds a deep and ancient history intertwined with the primordial forces of nature. Long before the dawn of organized religion, early humans revered the Fae, the elemental spirits believed to be the original caretakers of Earth. These primal beings were manifestations of nature's raw power, embodying the elements and guiding humanity through its nascent stages of development. Shrines and altars were erected in their honor, marking a symbiotic relationship between humans and these ancient entities. However, this harmony was disrupted by the arrival of the Yazata, celestial beings akin to angels. The Yazata, driven by jealousy and a desire for dominance, waged a relentless war against the Fae. In their quest to supplant them, the Yazata sought to eradicate these elemental spirits and assume their role as mentors and teachers of mankind. As the Yazata's influence spread, the Fae were driven to the brink of extinction. Jockey Island emerged as one of their last sanctuaries. This island, steeped in ancient magic and natural power, became a critical stronghold for the surviving Fae. In recognizing its significance, the Yazata chose Jockey Island as a repository for sacred artifacts, hidden away even from their own kind. The island is protected by formidable magical wardings, making it virtually inaccessible without specific knowledge and spells. These enchantments create an impenetrable barrier against conventional means of travel, be it by sea or air. Powerful storms constantly swirl around Jockey Island, adding an additional layer of protection and obfuscation. Teleportation spells, which could potentially bypass these barriers, are ineffective unless performed with explicit permissions granted by the island's mystical protectors. These defenses ensure that Jockey Island remains shrouded in mystery, its secrets preserved from the outside world. Following her death and resurrection from hell by the rogue Yazata angel named Cedrion, the Sakari queen Inyana has lured her brother Ymura and his vessel Jake Stewart to Jockey Island under the pretense of great power and ownership of a sacred angelic weapon. Broadcasting her voice to all non-humans in the world, Inyana has made a bold declaration. Come to Jockey Island and participate in a tournament. The victor will win the angelic blade called the Banu Kazka. Forged by the ancient Yazatan sages under the leadership of the rogue Saren Prince Sane, the Banu Kazka has within it tremendous and fearsome supernatural power. Also receiving the invitation to Jockey was the former Grand General of Inyana's Sakari military and Ymura's direct superior, Hui. Having just placed his soul in a human vessel, Hui is at the absolute height of his power and anxiously awaiting his inevitable rematch with Ymura. Jake too seeks revenge on Hui, as the necessary component for receiving a human host was sacrificing the vessel's closest blood relative, Jake's friend Claire. Intercepting the call for a tournament, the mages of Endelgian have organized their own strike team to enter into the competition and prevent anyone hostile to humanity from winning the Banu Kazka. Led by the young mage Danny Livingston, the mages have arrived on Jockey and joined up with Jake. Having previously only encountered Jake as enemy, many of the mages are distrustful of him, despite Danny's insistent vouching for him. After arriving on Jockey, the participants battled each other furiously. It was announced by Inyana that anyone who kills another on the island will gain the energy and abilities of those they slay. Monsters and creatures of all types came to Jockey for more power, but by the end of the fighting, only 32 of them remained. Joining Jake and Hui in the tournament are the mages Danny Livingston, Alora Kever, Zia Lee, Dane Sino, Jonathan Butler, Alcine Porter, Adabin Zuberi, and Lillian Rom, the swordswoman and PIA consultant Alyssa Taram, the GX-enhanced assassin and personal bodyguard of the late Doctor, formerly known as Candy Stripe, now known as Des Karina, the Jotnar giant Klebarg Udros, the Alafar elves Zobelitis Arestal and Ilianara Zeros, the Salif mage called Filruf, the Knight of Itadale, Jamrig Darren, the Savart Alfar, Dark Elf Minduth Facino, the Varkalak King Norx Barian, the vampires Urania Minyades, Kasara Raylim, and Kamazots, the satyr Celastris Ne, the demon Osiris Udama, the Aesir demigod Ashera, the devils Gimorka, Dekarabia, and Kazadiah, the mysterious man named Mishi, and the necromancer Isheth Drakovak. Inyana's eyes glinted with cold satisfaction as she surveyed the remaining fighters. The sun was sinking below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of fiery red and orange. With a dismissive wave of her hand, she spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Rest tonight," Inyana announced, her tone dripping with malice. "You have until dawn to prepare for the tournament's continuation. As of now, only 32 of you remain. Tomorrow the real battles will begin." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, her form receding into the darkening landscape. The fighters, still reeling from the sudden violence and betrayals of the day, exchanged wary glances. The reality of their situation began to sink in, each person grappling with their own fear and exhaustion. The humans, now fewer in number and more desperate than ever, began to regroup. Jake, Danny, Alora, and the others moved with a sense of urgency, driven by the need to create some semblance of safety amidst the chaos. They gathered what little dry wood they could find, dragging the scraps of timber over to a central spot. As the wood was piled together and set alight, the fire began to crackle and split, casting flickering shadows on the faces of those gathered. The warmth was a welcome relief from the coming biting cold of the night, and the light from the flames provided a small measure of comfort. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desolate battlefields, Inyana's declaration of a night's reprieve offered a brief, if uneasy, respite for the remaining fighters. The fierce chaos of the day had given way to a tense quiet, broken only by the crackling of the makeshift fire that the humans gathered around. The atmosphere was thick with an uneasy camaraderie. The once disparate group, now bound together by the shared experience of being cut down to 16, huddled close, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. The firelight danced across their faces, revealing a mosaic of weariness, anxiety, and determination. Danny, still shaken from the earlier confrontation, sat close to Alora, who was busy casting a protective barrier around their encampment. Her movements were deliberate and focused, her eyes scanning the perimeter for any signs of impending danger. The barrier, a shimmering shield of magical energy, created an aura of security, though the sense of safety was more psychological than absolute. It was a thin line of protection in a world where betrayal and violence lurked just beyond their fragile defenses. The humans, once divided and distrustful, now found themselves drawn together by necessity. They exchanged wary glances and whispered conversations, trying to piece together their fractured alliances and make sense of their predicament. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices carrying the weight of fear and uncertainty. The fire provided both physical warmth and a semblance of emotional comfort, but it could do little to dispel the underlying tension that had taken root. Jake, observing the uneasy regrouping, felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The temporary truce among the humans was a small victory, but the knowledge that the tournament would resume at dawn loomed over them like a dark cloud. The fire's warmth did little to chase away the chill of the coming battles. As the night deepened, the humans settled in, trying to make the best of their situation. They arranged makeshift bedding around the fire and took turns keeping watch, their eyes darting to the darkened edges of their encampment, where the shadows seemed to shift and writhe. The barrier flickered intermittently, casting ethereal glows that occasionally illuminated the encroaching darkness, serving as a reminder of both their protection and their vulnerability. Those disgusting creatures did not even know the danger they are in. They still think that they have a chance to not only survive, but to win this tournament. Soon, they will all be dead, and their power absorbed by Hui. Inyana, perched atop a distant vantage point, observed the humans with a cruel satisfaction. The anticipation of the tournament's resumption and the suffering it promised filled her with a dark thrill. She knew that the coming battles would test the limits of every combatant, pushing them to their breaking points. And as the humans huddled together, clinging to their fragile alliances, she reveled in the knowledge that the true horrors were yet to come. Kazura glanced in her direction, still unsure how reliable the former queen of the Sakari was. She was always in it for herself, and with so much riding on this tournament for all of them, she could not be fully trusted to stick to Cedrion's plan. If it came down to it, could he kill her to make sure things stay on track? I would not ride all of them off so easily. Each of them has a certain special quality that has set them above all the others who came to this island seeking power and glory. They survive not by chance, but by their own resourcefulness. I believe they will provide us with some very entertaining matches. Alyssa watches Descarina, who paces the perimeter of the protective barrier, studying it. I do not understand that girl's power. If I am ever to face her, I will need a better idea. She has a strange demonic aura, but there is something else about her that is off. Descarina notices that she is being watched. What do you want? She growls. You've been eyeing me for a while now. Are you just that eager to die? What are you? Alyssa asks, holding her sword out in caution. Your energy is contradictory. I am a patchwork of misery and despair, Descarina says with a grin. I am the single greatest accomplishment of the Doctor. She turns to glare at Danny, a man that she killed. Danny flinches, overhearing Descarina. The sound of the insect the Doctor was transformed into, crunching beneath her boot, replays in her ears. That man created monsters that killed a lot more people than most of the demons that came to this island, Alyssa says. How can you find fault in my hatred of the mages when they killed your companion as well? Descarina asks. Instead of fighting me, we should become allies and kill the mages together. Alyssa freezes, her hands trembling as she remembers Bernat's death. having pushed the feelings down so that she could focus on fighting. She is now vulnerable as they become flooding back. Only one of us will be lucky enough to kill them if we fight each other, Descarina continues. But if we team up, we can share in the sweet revenge. Alyssa's hand shakes, but she keeps her sword pointed at Descarina. I see what you're doing, but it will not work. Whoever my opponent is, I will cut them down, whether it is you or one of the mages. Descarina shrugs before walking away to find another opponent. You don't have to make a decision now. I'm sure that we'll meet again. As the fire crackled and popped, sending occasional embers into the cool night air, Jake and Allure settled beside it. The warmth from the flames contrasted sharply with the cold, tense atmosphere that enveloped the camp. They stared into the fire, both lost in their thoughts before Jake finally broke the silence. Not quite the island vacation I was expecting, huh? Jake said, his voice carrying a note of forced levity. Allure glanced over at him, her expression a mix of exhaustion and frustration. No, definitely not. I didn't think it would come to this. It's hard to believe how quickly things fell apart. Jake nodded, the weight of the day's events heavy on his shoulders. Yeah, it's been rough. But we've made it this far. We just need to keep pushing forward. Allure sighed, pulling her cloak tighter around her. It's not just the fighting. It's the fact that we're out here, surrounded by monsters and people who will turn on each other in an instant. It's like every time we think things might settle down, something else comes up. Jake glanced around at their small group, the flickering firelight casting long shadows on their faces. I know, but we have to stick together. We can't afford to let fear or chaos tear us apart. Not now. Not with everything that's at stake. Allure gave a small, appreciative smile. You're right. It's just hard to stay hopeful with everything happening. Especially with the way Inyana set things up. It feels like we're just pawns in her game. Jake's expression hardened slightly. We're more than that. We've got a purpose here, even if it feels like we're just being played. We need to focus on what we can control, and make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. Allure nodded, her gaze drifting back to the fire. I just wish we had more time to prepare, to understand what we're up against. The other mages joined them at the fire, having collected more sticks and driftwood from the beach. Going out as a group, they are much safer and less likely to be ambushed by any of the other competitors. Look at the two of you getting all comfy, Butler teases Allure and Jake as he sits between them. We aren't interrupting anything, are we? Allure blushes. Of course not. We're just trying to get a plan together for tomorrow. A plan? Butler is surprised. What kind of plan do we need? It's a tournament. You wait your turn, fight, and win. Nothing simpler. You don't know Inyana like I do, Jake says. Nothing is that easy with her. She has an ulterior motive. This tournament is just for show. Alcine lets a sigh, her gaze fixed on the fire. I think we're all just trying to keep it together. But it's hard to ignore the reality of what's coming. Dane, Zuberi said, attempting to shift the conversation. You've been through a lot of battles. Got any advice for us? Sinnoh's usually calm demeanor was slightly strained, but he managed to respond. Focus on the here and now. Don't let the bigger picture overwhelm you. Take it one step at a time, one fight at a time. Easier said than done, Zaya said, shaking her head. We're facing monsters that could tear us apart in seconds. I've seen what they're capable of. It's hard to stay positive. Jake nodded, his expression thoughtful. I know it's tough, but we need to stay sharp. If we let fear take over, it's going to be a lot harder to get through this. Allure, looking a bit more pensive, added, Jake, how do you stay so calm? Doesn't it bother you that most of us might not make it through tomorrow? Jake's gaze hardened slightly, though he forced himself to maintain a composed exterior. Experience helps, he said simply. I've been in situations where the odds were stacked against me. It's not about being afraid. It's about managing that fear and using it to stay focused. Allure's eyes, filled with a mixture of frustration and fear, met Jake's. You're right, but it doesn't make it any easier. We're all scared. We're all worried. Jake gave her a reassuring nod, though internally he carried the weight of the knowledge that many of them really wouldn't survive the next day. I know. It's okay. We're all in this together, and that's what matters. We need to be there for each other, even if things seem grim. The group fell into a somber silence, each lost in their own thoughts as they stared into the fire. The crackling flames offered a small comfort, a brief relief from the uncertainty that loomed over them. Jake, while trying to provide support and calm, felt the heavy weight of the truth he couldn't share, that the coming battles would be brutal and not all of them would make it through. At the edge of their group, Alyssa stands alone, watching, studying each of her fellow competitors carefully. She notices that among the mages, one does not speak much, or interact much with the others. She narrows her eyes on Provost Lillian Rom, trying to get a read on the young woman. There's something strange about that girl, Alyssa thinks. She is not like the others, though I do not know how. I will have to keep my guard up. Jake threw a few more sticks into the fire, watching as they sparked and flared. We're going to have to make do with what we've got. We just need to remember that we're stronger together. There was a brief, reflective silence between them. The fire's warmth seemed to push back against the encroaching chill of the night, and for a moment, it felt like a small bubble of normalcy amidst the chaos. You're right, Laura said finally, her voice steady. We've got to stick together, and we'll figure this out one step at a time. Jake nodded, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. Exactly. We'll face whatever comes our way, and we'll make it through. For now, let's just focus on getting some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Danny stands at the edge of the gathering, her arms crossed tightly against her chest. The heat of the reflective flames washing over her, but failing to thaw the cold dread growing in her heart. The names of the fallen swirl in her mind. Provost Malenko, Provost Guerrero, Provost Drahele, Provost Javad, Apprentice Abbott, Bernat. Each of them lost to this cruel island. Each sacrifice another scar on the battled resolve of those left behind. She tries to regain the confidence she has lost since the first of her teammates fell in battle to the monsters bound for Jockey Island. Her hubris cost them their lives. She thought she could sail into the tournament a hero, that she and her friends could join Jake and soundly defeat the forces of evil. Life, in its unfairness, did not turn out that way. Stuck here, She knows that she must continue forward, but at what cost? Will any of them return to Endelgian alive? Jake too becomes lost in his thoughts. The mages of Endelgian, his comrades, some of them, his friends, sit silently, lost in their own thoughts as they stare into the flickering flames. Alyssa is beside him, her face taut with the same turmoil, though her eyes, once full of intensity and confidence, now seemed hollowed out by the weight of what's to come. Tomorrow the real bloodletting would begin. Only one may win in Yana's tournament, and Jake knows all too well that the mages who remain will have to turn on each other. The mere thought of it turns his stomach. He's fought beside these people, shared moments of triumph and defeat, pain and camaraderie. Yet now he's being pushed toward the darkest path imaginable. Jake's eyes burn as he glances at the flames, seeing distorted reflections of faces he's come to care about, faces that might soon be his enemies. He can't stop thinking about Hui and Inyana. Their faces loom over his every thought, the ones responsible for all of the suffering, for every death, for the rage that simmers inside him like an unquenchable fire. His hands clench into fists as a dark thought begins to creep into his mind. What lengths am I willing to go to get my revenge? Alyssa shifts beside him, casting him a sidelong glance. She knows the inner battle he's fighting, as they all are. Jake, she murmurs, her voice barely audible over the crackling flames. You're thinking about them? Hui and Inyana. Jake doesn't respond right away. His eyes remain fixed on the fire, watching the flames dance. His thoughts are darker than he's willing to admit, even to her. Would I kill one of the mages? Someone I've fought beside? To achieve my goal? His mind flickers to Danny. At the hospital, she had been by his side when no one else was. But what if it came down to her? What if she stood in his way? Could he kill her? The thought sends a shudder through him, and he feels the weight of his guilt pressing down like iron chains around his heart. What would Yamura do? He wonders. The spirit within him, the strength that has carried him through so much. Would Yamura push him to cross that line, to sacrifice anyone and everyone for vengeance? But deep down, Jake knows it's not Yamura's voice that's echoing in his mind. It's his own, the raw, festering hatred that he's held on to for so long. I can't let it consume me, he thinks. Yet even as he tells himself that, the darker part of him whispers, but what if it's the only way? This thing has gotten a lot bigger and messier than just my beef with the Sakari. Danny brought all of these people into this, and now their lives are depending on our success. You cannot be distracted by the mages. Such distractions will get you killed, Alyssa says. Everyone's lives are in their own hands. We all knew what we were getting into when we stepped foot on this island. No, I don't think anyone was prepared for this, Jake whispers solemnly. Especially myself. The reflective flames seem to grow taller, more menacing, as if mocking him. They flicker with the possibilities of tomorrow, taunting him with the images of what he might become if he lets himself fall too far. The wind carried the scent of salt and blood through the trees, mingling sea air with the musk of leaf litter and old bark, and the gore left lying about the island from the hundreds, maybe thousands of corpses, left to rot. In a clearing just beyond the beach, the campfire had dwindled to a bed of smoldering coals, casting soft orange glows against the tents and makeshift shelters scattered along the sand. Shadows flickered across the forest edge, where the canopy gave way to stars. Jake sat on a flat rock near the fire pit, staring into the embers as though they might whisper him answers. The others nearby were quiet, each caught in their own rituals of readiness. After all they'd seen, after all they'd lost, there was little left to say. Alyssa sat cross-legged with her swords across her knees, drawing a whetstone down the edge of one blade, in slow, meticulous strokes. The sound of steel sharpening was rhythmic, almost meditative. A half-cleaned pelt from some unknown beast hung beside her, drying stiff in the night breeze. The wind blew sharp and hollow through the broken trees, rustling what few leaves clung to the crooked branches. Overhead, the sky was a dull iron gray. The light as thin and cold as the breath misting from their mouths. No fire crackled in the center of this makeshift camp. Only a bare circle of stones and damp earth, waiting for kindling that hadn't yet returned. Jamrick stood near the edge of the clearing, his armor still on, though it wore the grime of a long day without rest. His brow was creased, and his gloved hands clenched behind his back in a soldier's attempt at composure. The silence had dragged on too long. "Has anyone been in contact with our world?" he asked, his voice cutting through the wind like a drawn blade. "Anything at all?" A grunt answered him. Klebarg, hunched nearby on a half-buried tree root, looked like a boulder someone wrapped in red robes in a joke. His massive shoulders shrugged under the fabric as he scratched at his tangled beard with one hand, and picked at the mud beneath his fingernails with the other. "Nah," he muttered. "Tried one of them scrying balls earlier, but dropped it in the sea." Jamrick turned his head sharply. "You what?" Klebarg gave a slow, rumbling chuckle, more amused with himself than apologetic. "Slipped out of my hand. Real shiny thing. Looked important." From a short distance away, Philrith let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a hiss. The avian mage's long neck craned in Klebarg's direction, feathers around his collar fluffing up in agitation. His golden eyes locked on the giant. "You lost my bowl!" he screeched. His voice had the tremble of someone caught between disbelief and outrage. "That bowl was tuned to the upper winds of the eastern reach. It took years to calibrate." Klebarg looked over lazily and blinked. "Oh, that was yours?" "Yes, it was mine," Philrith snapped. "You do not touch another mage's instruments, especially not ones you do not understand." Klebarg shrugged again, wide and slow like a landslide. "Didn't look that odd. Figured I'd give it a go." He sniffed, then looked down one nostril thoughtfully and began prodding it with a thick finger. Philrith went rigid, wings tightening against his sides. "You utter mountain of ignorance!" Klebarg withdrew his finger, examined what he'd found, then casually flicked it aside. "Hey, calm down, Feathers. Ain't like it's the end of the world. You probably got another way to flap out a message to your sky friends." "My name," Philrith said coldly, "is Philrith of the Salif, third wing of the Eastern Gale, attuned to the 6 upper currents, and sworn voice of the Council of Wind and Sky." Klebarg scratched his side and leaned back against a bent tree. "That's so? Fancy title for someone who can't even send a letter." Philrith's eyes narrowed into golden slits. "You are the most insufferable brute I have ever had the misfortune to travel with." Klebar grinned, revealing a missing tooth and a lopsided charm. Oh, you're just mad I lost your shiny bowl. Why did we even bring you along? Filroth turned on his clawed heel and, with a sharp snap of feathers, stalked off into the trees, muttering gusty, high-pitched curses under his breath in a language that sounded like whistling wind through glass. Klebar chuckles to himself. I'm the best fighter on the team. You'd all be dead now if I hadn't come along. Jeremiah exhaled slowly through his nose. Gods help us, he muttered, mostly to himself. We're going to die here, and that one's last act will be picking his nose. Klebarg just laughed again, deep and pleased with himself. Could be worse, he said. Least I ain't cold. He pulled his robe tighter around his massive form and leaned back to wait. Zobella, the young elf girl, sat perched on a moss-slicked stone just beyond the beckoning pair, her legs tucked beneath her like a perched bird of prey. In her hands, she worked a delicate braid, weaving thin, bleached bones into a length of sinew cord. Each twist was careful, reverent. The bones clicked softly as they moved. Tiny ribs, knuckle joints, and the occasional shard of something once fanged. She hadn't said a word during the exchange, but her ears twitched, once, then again, tilting towards sounds none of the others noticed. The distant shuffle of trees, the faint splash of waves against stone, the beat of a wing far too large to belong to a bird. She gave no sign of concern, just an adjustment of posture, spine straightening ever so slightly. She heard something, Klebar rumbled, glancing her way without turning his head. That little ear-wiggling thing she does. Filroth, still sulking a few paces away, turned slightly at that. Of course she has. Elves are attuned to the forest breath, unlike some of us who crush moss with every step. Klebar tilted his head. Are you still talking? I was not talking to you, Filroth sniffed, his feathers settling, though the tight line of his beak betrayed lingering irritation. Jeremiah let out a slow exhale and walked a few steps closer to Zobella, his armor clinking softly. What is it? He asked. His tone was gentler when speaking to her, though still edged with the habit of command. Zobella didn't look up. Her voice came light and clear, like the ring of silver against glass. 3 mages, tired, one limping. They're dragging a bundle of wet wood, and something following, further back. Klebarg frowned and began to rise. Something following? What kind? She looked up then, wide violet eyes meeting his. Too quiet to be a beast. Too fast to be a corpse. Jamrick's hand instinctively fell to his sword's hilt. One of the other competitors? Filroth's wings flared in nervous irritation. Let's hope they haven't come to knock off some of the competition before tomorrow morning. Not a bad idea, really, Klebarg said, rolling his neck until it popped loudly. I'm bored enough to punch something just for looking at me wrong. Zobella didn't react to the noise. She tied off the bone cord with a twist of her fingers, then looped it around her wrist like a bracelet. Don't let your boredom get us killed, she said softly. Klebar gave a lopsided grin. I'll only hit it if it tries to hit me. I'm polite like that. Filroth muttered something that sounded suspiciously like a barbaric glacier, but Zobella ignored them both. Her eyes drifted to the trees beyond. I'll go meet the mages, she said, standing smoothly, almost weightless on the stone. If it's a threat, I'll draw back here, so be ready. Jamrick stepped forward. "You shouldn't go alone." She looked up at him. "I'm not alone. You three are loud enough to find me in a blizzard." Without another word, she turned and slipped into the tree line, her steps vanishing in the moss and brush like wind through silk. Jamrick watched her go, a flicker of concern tightening his jaw. "She's brave," he muttered. "She's mad with grief," Phil replied, ruffling. "She's still mourning the death of her brother. Who walks towards danger like that?" Klebarg chuckled. "Someone who doesn't need armor or feathers to be sharp." Jamrick glanced at the now empty stone where Zobel had been. Her absence made the clearing feel colder. "Let's hope she comes back before whatever's out there decides it's hungry." Zobella vanished into the tree line like mist, her form slipping between shadows with the ghost-quiet grace only the Alifar possessed. The moss didn't shift beneath her feet. Branches didn't creak. Birds didn't cry. Only once she was gone did the stillness press in. For a while, no one spoke. Even Klebarg went silent, eyeing the trees with a rare flicker of thought behind his heavy brow. The breeze picked up, carrying with it the scent of rain and crushed ferns. And then he moved, from where he had been standing all along, half blended into a stone outcropping just beyond the others. Ilionaro Elzaros took one step forward. The older Alifar was motionless no longer. The wind caught the hem of his dark, weather-worn cloak, and for a moment the silver threads embroidered into its trim caught the light, marking him unmistakably as one of the Alifar's noble houses. His pale hand, ringless and scarred from centuries of dueling, rested casually on the hilt of a sword whose grip was bound in black leather. Unlike Jamrick's or Klebarg's posture, there was no tension in him. He stood like a tree stands, grounded, unshakable, and unmoved by the bickering of lesser creatures. Thorif was the first to speak. "I suppose you didn't feel like warning anyone your pupil was walking into danger." Ilionaro didn't look at him. "She was not walking into danger. She was walking toward it." Klebarg squinted at him. "Ain't that the same thing?" "No," Ilionaro said quietly. "It's not." Jamrick turned, stepping toward the older elf. "She's young, and we're exposed. If something's spying on us..." "She's younger," Ilionaro agreed, not blinking. "But she's not weak, not unwatched. You forget what kind of warrior she trains to become." Pharaoh scoffed and crossed his wings. "I didn't forget. I just don't have a habit of letting children lead intercept missions." Ilionaro's eyes finally shifted, ancient and bright like ice under starlight. "You still think of her as a child because you don't understand what grief does to our kind." The statement landed like a blade between them. Klebarg leaned back with a low whistle. "Ooh." Philorif glanced away, ashamed, then muttered, "I didn't mean..." "She braided her brother's bones. Her twins' bones," Ilionaro said calmly, almost tonelessly. "Each one of them was woven for a reason. Each knot was a rite. And that silenced them." Jamrick bowed his head slightly in respect. "Zoran fought well, and died a warrior's death." "I know," said Ilionaro. He did not move. "And his killer will answer for his death tomorrow. I face Nalzes's enforcer in the first round, and I will not fail." The mention of Menduth Ficino, the Svardalfar, servant of Nalzesh, turned the air colder. Even Klebarg stopped fidgeting. Everyone knew what the first round of tomorrow's finals meant. A reckoning was coming, and Ilionaro was already preparing. Do you think she'll be able to draw whatever's out there back here? Jamrick asked quietly, trying to shift the weight of the moment. She will, Ilionaro said. She knows how to bait a hunter. Thorith glanced into the trees uneasy. I just hope she doesn't bait something that wants more than kindling. She knows the risk, Ilionaro replied. And she has teeth of her own. Jamrick stood up and crossed his arms over his chest, the polished metal of his armor catching faint glints from the dying fire. The human knight was ever watchful, as if guarding even sleep itself. His sword was always within reach. I'll go after her. We need more wood anyways. Klebarg stands up, grunting. You can't carry much wood with those scrawny human arms. I'll go. No one needs to go after her, Ilionaro says. Being alone right now is what she needs. Except she's not alone, Jamrick argues. She went off on her own after she heard something. Probably just an animal, Klebarg says. As the champions of Celiat Tarim argued, nearby the fire belonging to Jake and the mages also began to wane. The last sputtering pieces of driftwood cast weak amber light across their faces, shadows dancing like ghosts across the soaked earth. The cold had teeth here, even when the wind wasn't howling. Soon it would bite deeper. Fire's going out, Jake says, to no one in particular. Danny stirred from her spot near the edge of the ring. Her cloak was wrapped tightly around her shoulders, but her breath still fogged on the chill. We should gather more wood, she said, glancing toward the dying embers, before the fire gives out completely. Allure was already standing, brushing mud from the hem of her robe. I'll go with you. Yeah, me too, Zaya says. Safety in numbers is important on this island. Senno stretched as he rose to his feet, joints cracking from long stillness. We might as well all go, rather than splitting up. Across from them, Zuberi didn't move. He sat cross-legged, sharpening his sword with slow, precise strokes, each rasp of steel against stone, sounding like it could split silence in half. His voice came low and dispassionate. Safety is an illusion we haven't earned. He didn't need to look to know Alyssa's eyes were on him again. Watching. Always watching. Not with fear, never that, but with purpose. With anger she didn't bother to hide. He didn't blame her, not really. If someone had murdered one of his friends, he'd be plotting just as much. He'd stare holes into them too. But none of them saw the full truth. Not Danny, not Allure, not even Senno. They had all stood there, frozen like statues, useless. Every single one of them paralyzed with indecision when Inyana had made her demand. One of you dies. Choose, or I will choose for you. All of you. No one moved. No one could speak. But Zuberi had acted. And because of that, because he'd taken the burden, made the impossible choice, they were all still alive. All of them except for Bernat. And still, they looked at him like he was the monster. He wasn't even aiming for Bernat. It was Jake Stewart who should have died. It was his fault they were here to begin with. his meddling, his secrets. If Jake hadn't stumbled into all this tournament madness, if he hadn't made enemies of gods and tyrants and monsters, they'd still be living their small lives in peace. But because he was Danny's friend, everyone else had gotten pulled in, dragged into a war that wasn't theirs, onto a cursed island that should have swallowed someone else. Zuberi's jaw tightened. His blade sang softly across the wet stone. Not even Senna would meet his gaze now. Elora broke the tension by slinging her pack over one's shoulder. I don't want to be gone long. Let's get the driest stuff we can and come straight back. No wandering. Danny gave a quiet nod and stepped towards the edge of the trees. Butler, she said, glancing back. You coming? The young man gave a mock bow, his cloak flaring just slightly. Wouldn't miss it. Nothing like foraging in the dark with cursed magic storms and wild monsters a breath away. Zuberi didn't look up, neither did Alyssa, though her expression darkened the moment Danny walked past. Jaw tightening, arms crossed. Her glare full of words she'd said too many times already. Behind them, Alcine rose to her feet, brushing dirt from her knees. She glanced towards the edge of the woods, then cast a long look around the camp. I think I'll come with you guys, she said, her voice quiet but firm. There's a bad vibe around the camp. It's making my skin crawl. Rom stood with her at almost the same moment, the sleeves of her robe fluttering slightly as she moved. While most mages were sized and measured for their robes, Rom somehow just didn't seem to fit quite right in hers. It was as if she was wearing the robes of an older sibling while playing dress-up. She constantly rolled the sleeves up and lifted the robes as she walked through the forest. I feel it too, she said. Like something's watching us from just out of sight. The shadows feel thicker than before. Elora's brow furrowed. Fine. We stay close. We don't split up and no heroics. Danny adjusted her own satchel and nodded to the group. Let's go. 10 minutes out, then we loop back. The group began to move, 5 figures fading into the trees beneath the moonlight. The fire sputtered behind them, casting long shadows. Zuberi didn't rise. He simply kept sharpening. Let them be afraid of him, if that's what kept him alive. Twigs snapped beneath boots. Branches brushed shoulders, and the further they went from camp, the more the sounds of the forest changed. The others had gone, slipping into the trees with muttered instructions and half-hearted jokes, the faint crunch of boots on wet leaves fading into the distance. The dying fire crackled softly, barely more than a few glowing coals now, casting pale orange light that danced across the stone-ringed clearing. That left just the 3 of them. Jake, sitting cross-legged near the fire, was poking at the coals with a half-charred stick. Alyssa still leaned against a crooked tree at the edge of the clearing, arms folded, one boot propped against the bark, eyes flicking up constantly. Never toward Zuberi, who sat off by himself. His back was to them, cleaning something that didn't need cleaning for the 3rd time. The silence stretched. Jake cleared his throat, voice a little too loud in the quiet. You know, back home, I used to get cold like this during winter training. I'd stuff newspaper under my shirt just to trap body heat. I looked like an idiot, but hey, it worked. Alyssa didn't answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the tree line, her face unreadable in the half-light. Jake gave a nervous chuckle and tapped the stick to a stone. We could use some newspapers right about now. Or some hot chocolate. Or a sun god. I'd take any of the three. Still nothing. Zuberi shifted slightly, adjusting the blade in his lap without looking up. His movements were deliberate, distant. Not bored. Not disconnected. He might as well have been alone. Jake tried again. Or maybe those weird heating pads they sell in gift shops. You crack them and then they warm your hands for like 5 minutes and then immediately disappoint you. Kinda like... He caught himself, then muttered, "Never mind." Alyssa's expression didn't change. Jake's eyes flickered towards Zuberi, who hadn't looked at either of them once. The young man's jaw was tight, hands working in practiced mechanical motions. Jake glanced at Alyssa again. "You okay?" Her eyes moved to him slowly. She didn't blink. "I'm fine," she said flatly. "Just want this night to end." Jake nodded, swallowing. "Yeah, same." A beat passed. Jake let out a low breath, rubbed the back of his neck, and tried to laugh again. "Well, we're just 3 rays of sunshine tonight, huh?" Alyssa didn't answer. Her gaze had already returned to the trees. Zuberi didn't even pretend to listen. The fire hissed as a piece of bark collapsed inward. Jake sat back, the weight of the silence finally starting to press down on him, too. He looked between the two of them, the way Alyssa wouldn't even glance in Zuberi's direction, and how Zuberi seemed determined to become part of the rock he sat against. This was the kind of silence that wasn't just awkward. It was a quiet war. Jake pulled his knees up to his chest and stared into the fire. "They'll be back soon," he said to no one in particular, and no one replied. Just the wind and the trees, and the long cold wait for the morning. Down the shoreline, away from the scattered camps of the humans and monsters alike, a lone figure sat in the dark. He had no fire, no bedroll, not even a blanket against the wind, just a stone perch overlooking the tide. Salt spray hissed against the rocks, and the ocean dragged itself back and forth like a dying beast. The moon hung low, casting a silver gleam across his pale hair, unmoving in the breeze. Mishi. He hadn't spoken much to anyone since arriving. Hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. No one even knew what race or even what world he was from. He didn't ally with the humans exactly, but he hadn't been directly antagonistic either. The only thing that was clear was that he had a deep animosity towards the Sukari. He had no known allegiances, and no belongings other than just a black cloak over his bare shoulders, and a face that looked carved from ivory and shadow. Jake hesitated just past the edge of the dunes, watching the solitary figure. Something about Mishi's presence tugged at the air, made it thinner, like breathing near him cost more effort than it should. Still, Jake approached. "Hey," he called out, keeping his voice level. "Bit cold out here to be alone, isn't it?" No response. He walked closer, careful not to make any sudden moves. "We've got a campfire back that way. It's not much, but it's warmer than this." Mishi didn't turn his head. His gaze stayed on the water, unblinking, distant, like he was looking at something deeper than the waves. Jake rubbed the back of his neck. Figured I'd come talk to someone who wasn't trying to kill me or giving me the silent treatment. Still no reply. Jake exhaled and stepped beside the boulder, planting himself a few feet away in the sand. You're not with the others. Not the monsters. Not the Tolkien group. So what's your angle? A pause. Then Mishi's voice, low and toneless, finally surfaced. None of this concerns me. His eyes didn't shift. Jake furrowed his brow. That's a funny thing to say when you're competing in a death tournament. Mishi tilted his head slightly, but not toward Jake. I am only here for one fight. Jake frowned. You mean Hui? Mishi was silent for a moment longer, then... Yes. That one word carried more weight than most men's threats. Like the name alone stirred something deeper, older. Jake squinted. You know him? Mishi's jaw twitched, barely perceptible. Not the way you mean. Jake waited for more, but he got nothing. Look, I don't know what he did to you, Jake said. But if it's a grudge match you're after, I didn't come here to talk. Mishi's voice cut across the surf like a blade, quiet but final. Jake straightened slightly. Right, sorry. Just figured it's better to not be alone out here, especially with nasty things watching the camps. I am not afraid of what watches. Jake watched him for another moment, then nodded slowly. Well, good luck, I guess. If you do fight Hui, just know he's tricky. He doesn't fight fair, and he'll do any underhanded thing he can to win. Mishi finally turned his head. His eyes were like mirrors, glassy, faintly luminous in the dark. Neither warm nor cruel. Ancient and tired. I know exactly what he is. Then he turned away again. Jake lingered a few seconds more, unsure whether to say something else. But whatever conversation there had been was already over. He walked back to his camp, the sound of the surf following him like a whisper. Behind him, Mishi sat motionless in the dark, staring into the sea, as if waiting for something to rise from it, or perhaps remembering something that already had. Jake had barely returned to the edge of the camp when Alyssa finally broke her silence. She didn't look at him at first. Still leaning against her tree, arms folded tight, sword resting near her boot. Her voice came out low, almost as if she had been chewing on the question for too long and couldn't hold it in any longer. How much do you know about that man? Jake turned, startled by the sound of her voice after so long. He followed her gaze, though she wasn't looking at him, but in the direction he'd come from. Toward the beach. Toward Mishi. Not much, Jake admitted, brushing the damp from his sleeves. Honestly, I'm not even sure he is a man. Alyssa's brow furrowed slightly, her jaw tight. I've studied hundreds of bloodlines. Every monster strain. Every cursed monster hybrid I've ever heard in a hunter's lodge or burned into a bestiary. He doesn't match anything. Maybe he is just a human like us, Jake shrugged. That doesn't seem to limit our variety. I mean, technically, the necromancer and the mages are human too. Alyssa is firm in her apprehension. He is not human. The energy that I sent from him is concealed. He is making a conscious effort for no one to be able to identify him, and that raises red flags. Even suppressed, No human can mask their presence completely. Jake dropped into a crouch near the fire pit, letting the faint heat of the coals warm his fingers. He fought with us earlier today, he said, during the battle royal before the tournament placements. Alyssa finally looked over at him. You didn't mention that. Jake gave a humorous chuckle. Wasn't much of a team effort. Verlaine, the Cambion, was wiping the floor with everyone. Half the monsters backed off. Others got trampled. He just walked through the chaos. Quiet, clean, no wasted motion. And this Mishi, he assisted. She does not recall Mishi's role in the battle, but it was so hectic and fierce that remembering a detail like that would be difficult for anyone. Jake nodded. Yeah, for about 10 seconds. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. He stepped in right when we were on the ropes, took the pressure off, gave us an opening to regroup. But when Verlaine was weak enough, he made sure he got the kill. Jake's hands tightened slightly, stole all of the Cambion's strength for himself. Alyssa exhaled through her nose. So he gained everything that half-breed had? Jake nodded again. Strength, resilience, celestial energy, whatever he had left. It's all his now. Inyana's spell is a complication that we could never have predicted, Alyssa said flatly. Yeah, her idea of sport. The whole island's under it. Whoever lands the killing blow gets the power of the one they kill. It's why Hui's gotten so damn strong. He's been feeding on every match. He doesn't hesitate. Jake looked up at her, the glow of the coals flickering in his tired eyes. We hesitate. Alyssa looked away again, back towards the dark shoreline. Then she stole a quick glare in Zuberi's direction. Not all of us. Yeah, I guess not, Jake muttered. Inyana sure went to some lengths to make this as difficult for us to succeed as possible. We cannot give her the satisfaction of breaking us, she said. You and I must fight even harder to defeat these foes. You cannot put your trust in anyone else. I know Danny. I've seen her good and her bad. She's seen me at my worst as well, Jake replies. I know that she can be trusted. A lot is said about a person by the company they keep. And again she glared at Zuberi for a moment. I do not want to see you lose by not lack of your own effort, but by betrayal. Silence lingered between them. Zuberi hadn't turned around once. Jake glanced in his direction, but let it go. The anger between Alyssa and Zuberi was a cracked wall he wasn't strong enough to fix tonight. He didn't know how close Alyssa and Bernard were, but it had to have been significant. She was crushed right now. It was as if her entire world had been torn apart. Jake suspected that kind of visceral reaction implied some deeper connection between them. Jake's voice dropped in concern. Don't think that I'm going to trust this guy blindly. Even I know there's something off about him. Mishi doesn't kill like the others do. There's no pride or rage, not even cruelty. It's like he's cutting weeds. It's clinical, like he's crossing names off of a list. Jake swallowed. He told me he's only here to fight Hui. At that, Alyssa's head tilted slightly. Jake nodded. He didn't even try to hide it. And yet he's still in the tournament, she murmured, still playing Inyana's game. Jake drew a circle in the ash with his finger. He's not playing it. He's using it. He's gaining strength just like everyone else. By the time there are only a few of us left, we won't even be recognizable to our old selves. She studied him for a moment, then turned, gaze hardening towards the sea once more. Let's hope that we doesn't beat him till the end. Jake didn't respond, because the truth was, he wasn't sure who scared him more, Inyana, Hui, Mishi, or himself.